Yeah.
You should have gotten tagged now. We're live, and I believe I correctly had it tag you, Alex.
Oh,
yeah.
Yep.
We'll see. Yeah, that looks like you. Yep. Sweet.
Awesome. Okay, here we go.
Hey, everybody.
Post this right now.
Cool.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll let a few people get in here before we start. And I listened to one guy, and his stream, he rambles for about 10 minutes. He's got 1 million followers.
Yep.
And then usually after about 10 minutes or so, he goes, okay, now it looks like there's about 400 or 500 people on. I was like, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really good. We'll see what we get. The most we've had on the stream has been, I think, like close to 300 when they first started.
It was certainly over 200.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're on X, welcome. We're just getting ready to start the show.
I think we should just go.
Go.
Because
do it.
we have no idea what's going to happen with my connection
Yeah,
today.
that's a good point. Okay, we'll see how long we last.
That's correct. Yeah. All right. Here goes nothing.
Here goes nothing.
I got to get that in place. All right. Yeah. Here truly goes nothing. Business Brain, episode 559 for Wednesday, June 19th, which is Juneteenth, National Wristwatch Day, National Martini Day, 2024. Greetings, folks, and indeed, welcome to Business Brain, the show where we take an idea or six, we dissect them, we discuss them, we analyze them, we use them to tune our business brains collectively every single time we get together for an episode. And here today in Durham, New Hampshire, with some flaky internet, it seems, maybe, I don't know. I'm Dave Hamilton. I do know that.
Yes, and I'm out here still on the West Coast. I'm Shannon Jean. We'll see how long this lasts, whether Dave's... and Dave, all the knobs and the smart stuff is in Dave's studio, so without him, we're kind of messed up. It's just
we're host.
Yeah. But hey, if you're watching the live stream, you see there's 3 boxes with 3 heads in it this week, and we're joined by Alex Forbes from Lane 17. Is it Lane 17 Cabinetry? What is it?
Oh, it's Lane 17 Cabinet Company. It's Cabinet Co. for short. Yep.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So I met Alex on X. God, has it only been like 4 or 5 months ago? Maybe.
I don't know how, but I think it's only been 5 or 6 months max.
Yeah, but we've probably exchanged a few thousand messages back and forth in our group that we hang out with. So, Alex, I'm thrilled to have you here today. I want to learn more about you, your business, what you have going on. So give us some background on, go back a little further than Lane 17. What's your entrepreneurial journey? How'd you get there? Were you always in business? Did you work for somebody else? Give us the rundown.
I think like going way back, I grew up in a family of small business owners. So mom's and dad's side, grandparents, like nobody had a regular W-2 job. They always supplied those W-2 jobs. And, I kind of grew up in that environment. My dad's side of the family, they had Forbes Brick. It was a brick and tile distribution business that started back in the 60s. My grandpa, my mom's side, general contractor. I think he was a master electrician, all that. So I was exposed to that without really knowing what it meant growing up. So I think that rolled into the typical, I did the lawn mowing business. I did, pressure washing, I did all that kind of stuff in high school. Never really had a real job. Got to college and graduated with a business degree in finance and had my first real dose of the real world, which was a corporate job out of school. And I did that for a year. And I was a commercial real estate brokerage. And it's what you think. I was 22 years old, baby face, trying to get 6-7 figure deals. That's not happening. So it was 100 cold calls a week for a year. And I'm like, something's got to change here. So I kind of resorted back to what I was brought up seeing, which was I'm going to start a business. And I want to figure out how to do that.
That's cool.
Well, yeah. If you're gonna put the work in, it might as well be for you.
Yeah. Well, so what led to Lane 17 was that in the summers between school, hobby, free time after this miserable job that I have, I was always tinkering with stuff. I like working with my hands. I like building things. I gravitated towards woodworking. So the name Lane 17 comes from a real place, kind of in central Maine. My family has a couple cabins on a lake up there, and my uncles they each have two different cabins. They have a wood shop overlooking a lake. I went to a summer camp up there for like 2 months where I was exposed to like shop class for the first time because my high school had cut that by the time I was in school.
Yep.
And, so Lane 17 is a real place. It's Fire Lane 17, which are like the inlets to the lakes that the city refers to them as fire lanes.
That's
and
cool.
our cabins are on Fire Lane 17. So that's kind of where I learned the craft and I was exposed to it. And I love doing that stuff. So when I was miserable at my job, I figured, how do I go? I'm very much I'm going to dive in head first. There was no business plan. There was no,
perfect.
Perfect, analysis of how this is going to work. It's just, I'm going to quit my job. I got a table saw. I got some other stuff. I crammed them into a 1-car garage at my mom's house where I was living at the time at like 23. And I started making cutting boards and just figured out how to sell those to people. And that's just really how I dipped my toes in the water. But there was no turning back because I had quit my job. So I was fully in at that point.
That's cool. I love it. It's like there's no choice, right? Once you take that, you burn the boats. And okay. And I think I saw you. So you get into woodworking. What led you to cabinets? I saw some pictures of you like hacking up big slabs of all kinds of. I mean, did you just try a bunch of different things and eventually got into the cabinet business? It looks. I'm a terrible finished. Well, I'm just not a finished cabinet. Anything I can't do.
Yeah.
Every hammer.
You're good with a framing hammer.
Framing hammer. yeah. So that leap into that craftsman part of it. How did that happen?
So like I said, I started with cutting boards. That morphed into like small pieces of residential furniture, custom dining tables, things like that. That's where like real furniture making. That's where I'm huge on attention to detail and how things work and down to the nitty gritty stuff that nobody would ever even would see it from a customer's perspective. I'd still really care about. So my attention to detail was kind of developed during learning how to make, I guess, fine furniture to an extent. And after a few years of doing that naturally, the cutting board thing, it's like, I think I sold $5,000 in my first 6 months. Like there's no way I was going to survive doing this.
Yeah.
However, some local restaurants that needed 30 or 40 cheese boards or something for appetizers. And I got a laser engraver for $15,000 that I didn't have the money for. I financed it, sold the jobs later, paid for it ultimately. But, and then those restaurants, they, go figure, guys or people sit at tables. So then every restaurant needed 20 to 50 tabletops made. By the way, they have, 40 feet of bar tops going in. And all of a sudden we were getting 6-figure commercial furniture packages. And it morphed. Furniture is a weird thing where it became like I needed equal parts production and equal parts craftsmanship. And that's like a very difficult thing to scale, especially from access to labor has been very tough, skilled labor lately. So right around 2020, coincidentally, COVID was kind of like the best thing that ever happened to our business because that's when we realized we needed to get away from furniture, which was a difficult business to scale through other people. Like my business partner and I were great, but we were very limited with just the two of us. Literally, I think April or May of 2020, the world kind of shut down for those couple months. And then all of a sudden, everybody was stuck in their house. They weren't traveling. Everybody was renovating. Interest rates were low. It was like, in hindsight, the perfect breeding ground for us to pivot into custom cabinetry. While all the big manufacturers had 20, 30-week lead times, we could kind of sneak in with 12-week lead times because we didn't have this big book of business with cabinetry yet. And it's kind of similar to how I started with cutting boards. It's just like we had some of the equipment already, but we just dove in. And I think the first kitchen project I ever accepted was $40,000 or $50,000 kitchen that we had no business doing, but we killed ourselves to make sure it was it was right and it was perfect on site. And we just cut our teeth for a couple of years that way until we really learned about flow and operations and lean manufacturing and engineering and real production systems. And I think, so that was 2020. I think by the end of 2020, we had cut out furniture. We totally transitioned the business. We were Lane 17 design company before. We switched to Lane 17 cabinet company, a slight little rebrand. I deleted everything off social media that used to be furniture. And I guess I had this to back up a little bit. I had this aha moment that really solidified it for me, 4 or 5 years ago, was that I was $3,000 pre-2020 prices before like all the inflation and material costs. It was tough to sell like a $3,000 or $4,000 custom dining room table. At least I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, so we don't have the budgets like you have out in Northern California. And
That's terrible.
Anyway, so people were dogging me on price for like $3,000 or $4,000 table, handcrafted, totally custom made. And behind me, I'm in their dining room. Behind me in their kitchen, they had spent at least 30 grand on custom cabinets. And I was already pretty well connected with interior designers and even the homeowners that we kind of attracted. And I'm like, we're talking to the right people here, but we're selling them the wrong product. And I think we need to be selling the things behind me. And how do we make that happen? That's kind of what led to this rabbit hole of figuring it out.
All right, so this is fascinating to me because I've seen this in some businesses that I've had where I don't want to say by dumb luck. I mean, for you, I'll say it for me for sure. That, by dumb luck, you find yourself in a scenario where the market leads you, some change in the market, some market evolution, macro evolution. For you, it was COVID. I've had that with a business. I also had it just when sort of the internet was getting started, things like that, where the market leads you down a path where you can have short-term success. And what you did with that was used it to cash flow yourself to long-term success, right? You completely revamped. You did those first cabinets probably more by hand than you would ever want to admit, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And you just like sweated through it in inefficient ways, but got it done and learned a ton about what you would want to do the next time, and then started to systematize based on that with the opportunity that the market gave you. So you took advantage of it without putting the systems in place first, figured out that there was a long-term business opportunity, and then actually built that business sort of alongside your handmade cabinets, because it's what we do currently, kind of thing. Am I getting that right? Is that right?
Yeah, and I think, unless you come with all this experience of operating a certain business, and once you get to the point, all these guys that roll up businesses and they have that system, and I think those guys also had to start somewhere. And I think the reality of seizing an opportunity is exactly what you described, and it's not pretty, and it's a grind, and it could take months or years. And I think it's easy to show that highlight reel on Twitter or X or whatever social media, but because you couldn't possibly display to everybody really what it took to get to that point. And we're very much still in a grind phase because we're a young growing business, but just to go from we don't do something to we do something and employ people to do it, that is a huge step, and a lot of stuff goes wrong and a lot of things break and you make a lot of mistakes, but that's how you learn.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, so I'm thank you for A, telling that story, and B, sort of re-articulating it there, because you're right. No one sees that story. It's not the sexy story that gets told on social media. No one would read it if it was out there. I mean, we've all tried, at least Shannon and I.
I want to hear that people are in love with the end state of entrepreneurship, not the daily grind.
They don't want to hear that it was dumb luck. And then I took that opportunity to grind it out for 5 years or 10 years or whatever it is. And the grind it out, when you say that, people are like, oh, that sounds great. Like they think they understand. But even when I'm saying it now, and I literally did it, right? Just like you did, just like Shannon has. Mm-hmm. I don't have a memory. Like our memory is intentionally fallible. Do you have kids?
Yeah, for only one, and she's only 15 months. So just
would you consider having another one?
Yeah.
Okay. The only reason you considered having another one is because you don't remember what it was like those first few weeks with a baby at home, right? Yeah. I mean, this happens to our memories. The sort of grind, the terrible parts of the grind are not the parts that we like. Our visceral memories of those go away. I'll never forget the first night at home with our second child. And I said to my wife, I was like, oh my God, how did we let ourselves get here? yeah, this is great. We hated this the first time. Like, well, how did we do this? It's like we forgot. And I'd be like, we didn't have a video camera, or maybe we did. I don't know. But I'm like, we got to videotape this and play this back for ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. We didn't, obviously.
Your business is the same way.
It's the same way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
even if you remember what you thought about it, you still don't remember how you felt. Like,
that visceral memory.
Yeah,
is
I get what
gone.
you're saying.
Yeah.
And
it's
but that
good
keeps you
that
going.
it's gone.
Yeah, it's good because.
But it's hard to tell the story.
Yeah. But and nobody people don't want to hear it. The post that I like to talk about doing stuff on X, and you're explaining all that, and even like people that my coaching clients, I always talk about it. I'm just like, look, the only difference is that I have more gray hair than you. I did it all, and it makes you sound smarter because you're telling it in reverse. But the grind you go through every single day, and you're just like, well, we have no choice. We can't make any money doing tables. So we're looking around, the foresight to look around and say, hey, So, okay, so I want to so you get to this point, you decide to make cabinets. I would imagine you have to make some pretty significant investments to get the right equipment. What comes first? Are you just doing everything manually and then slowly acquiring stuff, or do you go all in, get a big loan? Walk us through that part.
So I think when we made the decision, we had been doing furniture for like 4 years. So Lane 17's, it's only 8 years old. So we're pretty much at this point split 50%. The first half of our life has been furniture, and now the last 4 years has been only cabinets. So right at that midpoint when we made the switch, we had enough equipment that was enough of an overlap to just start. Like we had CNC equipment, we had all the basic stuff you need to get it made, but it was extremely manual. And the difference, furniture, even in let's say there's, I guess 50 tables and 50 table bases to a restaurant. That's only 100 things, 100 parts that come together. Your average, I would even say a modest kitchen is anywhere from 400 to 500 parts that need to get drilled, edge banded, assembled. Yeah. There might be 150 of them might need to get finished, whether through painted, the drawer boxes need to get finished, all that stuff. So it's the sheer volume of components moving through the system we had no idea that was even going to be like a thing to that extent. And we didn't know how to manage it. So to answer your question though, we had enough to get going. We basically had enough to feel confident or, stupid enough to accept our first $50,000 kitchen. And then we knew enough to be dangerous. We quickly realized with what we had to make a change. The business from just grinding furniture out for so many years, we were struggling cash flow wise. And this is also, Dave, you talk about luck. And I think a lot of it is, what's the saying? It's not timing the market, it's time in the market. And I think it's just being present in the game of whatever you're doing. Cause I had $100,000 worth of equipment that almost became completely irrelevant the second we decided to do cabinetry. And keep in mind, this was right at COVID too. So the whole world shut down. Nobody was really spending money for those, that spring, early summer. Right. I found a guy locally who was he has a tree cutting business. He milled up, he gets endless supply of trees. He milled up live edge slabs and things on the side. We had a ton of equipment to process big hunks of wood and planers and clamps and saws and all this stuff because we were making a lot of tables. And I sold it all to him. I compiled it, got photos, sold everything to him for $80,000.
Nice.
And he just in 2 weeks it was gone. And that would never happen. That's I think it was a get out of jail free card for the time that we were what we were trying to do and how we were trying to pivot. So anyway, we sold all that. I used that to get some more cabinet related equipment that allowed us to process things a little bit better. And it's we accepted that job. We were in 12 weeks we had to deliver the machinery that we needed, got there 4 weeks later, and we just had to figure out how to put it together. We got to tell you how chaotic it was. We got that kitchen. I think a month or two after that kitchen, a developer contacted me locally. They were building a 100 unit multifamily locally here. And they wanted, typically they're getting cabinets from China and super cheap. They spend a few grand on cabinets for the entire unit. It's very low budget. But the developer, wanted to spend good money on some sort of statement piece, and they opted to spend anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 on like a nice white oak kind of furniture style vanity for the bathrooms. We later learned that never happens, but we all of a sudden we went from our first kitchen at 50 to this developer had $100,000 vanity order for us, and we didn't even have CAD software to like make this thing, to design and make it yet. So we accepted the job, got a down payment, bought a $30,000 engineering software to like really do real cabinetry production.
Nice.
And then made the vanities, deliver them, and like figured out how to bring the whole thing together later. It was a whirlwind of a year.
All right, so I want to ask this question here because it's one thing to start a business, it's and grind it out, and you start making some money, and of course, money doesn't just like, for anybody who hasn't done this yet, it doesn't just come in nice steady waves with a steady increase. You get these peaks and valleys, right? You get piles of money, and then you nothing for months, and then piles again if you're lucky, right? All those things. And if you do it right, I don't mean to say that everything relies on luck. I just mean that sometimes you time things and it's fortuitous, right? But you're smart about it and all those things. But making those big capital investments is difficult initially, at least. Once you've done a couple of them and you realize, I've made these decisions the right way, they have paid off. Maybe not all of them have paid off, but you got your get out of jail free card, being able to sell that stuff off, those kinds of things. How was it like making that investment in the cabinet software at that point? Was that something that you hemmed and hawed over? Or did you just know, no, we've got to do this, and we're going to spend it and we're going to make it back?
I think so. Like to the first few years of the business, I had some cash to start the business, so we were pretty light on debt, if anything.
Okay.
Kind of the second phase to push into cabinetry was almost everything the business had to grow through debt. I financed, we probably have, I don't know, I'm looking out in the shop right now, we probably have $500,000 or so in equipment. I would say 250 or 300 of it is, on equipment leases or on equipment loans. And I think Shannon and I we've either talked about this or maybe connected it on this early on, this concept of just like when your back's against the wall and you have no option but to push forward, it almost becomes easier to think about those things and take those leaps of faith.
Yep.
And it's funny because at the time, I think we maybe had one employee. I didn't have any kids yet. I didn't even own a house yet. We were like just kind of looking for it. So I still really had no real adult obligations quite yet.
Sure.
But I had enough, I think, self-awareness and insight into maybe how I think I would feel once I had those responsibilities that in my mind, maybe this just is justification, but it was like, it's now or never. It's like, either I'm going to do this now, I'm going to finance, 100, 200 grand worth of equipment. We're going to expand the business. We're going to hire people. I don't know how to do this right now, but we're going to commit. And so I have no choice but to figure out how to do it and push forward. Cause I think like every entrepreneur, most are driven by fear of, I call it like ultimate failure, where you totally throw in the towel.
Yeah.
And it motivates you to just keep going and solve the next problem.
Yeah, well, we call it bullheaded persistence here, right?
Yeah.
Like I like that. We always say don't make fear-based decisions. It was something a guest years ago said to us and stuck with us. But there is that fear of ultimate failure. That's different, right? Because it's like, well, I can fail at these little things, but I'll always find a way to keep it going, and that is huge. Yeah,
and I think that. We need a new word. I was talking about the other day because it's consistency, even despite all this. I don't know where it's going to go, but it's also persistence. So I'm going to call it persistency. That's going to be it. And we're, you're keeping it going and not planning.
That's the bullheaded persistence we've been talking about for years.
You just go and I'll figure it out. And this is what I try to tell so many people. It's like, less planning, more action. You'll figure it out. Like now, in this, I want to ask you about this stage. I feel like you've kind of got the stage now where you're thinking, all right, I can think, I can take a breath a bit. Now we need these systems. And I know you're embracing some, lean manufacturing and 2% improvements or whatever. Talk about, well, two parts. What it feels like to leave the shop floor and be in your office, because I think that's a difficult thing for people. It's difficult for me to look out and see everybody like physically working and going, shouldn't I be out there? And then the second part is talk about the systems that you are starting to work on now.
So a few years ago, when we transitioned to cabinets, it's funny. Like I probably made every piece of furniture the first half of the business, and I have never actually made one of our cabinets that we've sold in the last 4 years. So at first, though, to your point, like it felt very foreign, and it felt, especially, I have a business partner. He has 20% of the business. I think at the time we had 1 or 2 employees. Like if we had 4 people, I was a quarter of our entire workforce. And like here I was in the office kind of messing around, even though I was doing things, but it didn't feel that way. It felt like I was missing out or whatever. So I think that lasted maybe, 5 or 6 months until I realized the kind of value that I could add being removed from that. And I think there's that lull time, and it's no different when you hire somebody new. There's kind of a lull in productivity when you have to train somebody new. When it was me, I was kind of training myself to be the next version of the leader within the business. So I haven't been in the shop floor for a long time. Now, like, I'll do everything to avoid going back to the shop floor. It's
they
whole
probably don't
thing,
want you there, right?
You mess everything up.
Way. Yeah, you mess everything up.
I think at this point, almost all of the equipment in the shop, I don't even know how to turn on, and I don't want to know how to turn it on. It's just
good.
like,
I love that.
You don't.
Yeah.
The day that you find out,
It's bad.
If I were you, the day that I found out is the day I would start micromanaging people again.
Yeah.
It's like I don't want
Yeah,
to
exactly.
do that. Like it's better
Yeah.
when
That's
I
a
don't.
natural tendency for sure to
course.
do that.
Especially as an independent entrepreneur, you're like, oh, I can figure this out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we did that, and so now we have, we're looking for our 10th person. So it'll be the first. This includes my business partner and I. So it'll be the first time, sometime in the next month, that we will have cracked, double digits in total people under one roof. And point your finger and say, go do work. Like that doesn't work anymore. So we need, the lean thing. We needed to hang our hat on something. This business is new. Every single thing has been a kind of product of my brain over the years, and we needed to develop a real culture. We decided to hang our hat on this lean mentality, which are 2-second improvements, Shannon, not 2% improvements. I guess they're similar.
Got it. 2 seconds. Yeah.
But it's continuous improvement, and it's meant to just incrementally improve things kind of forever, less fatigue. You should be able to enjoy your job more. It's all about adding value to the customer. And sometimes the customer is you're the guy next to you downstream in the process, not actually the end user. Sometimes it's you the next day doing a different process that you need to, work on something you had worked the day prior. And so we hung our hat on that. That comes through the rabbit hole of SOPs and creating standards and standard work and creating flow in the shop. And all of a sudden, how do we create the things? Yep, that was it. The Paul Akers 2-second lean. That's a lot of cabinet makers and woodworkers.
Put a link in the show notes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
that can apply to a lot of other businesses too. It's really a mentality, not like a system. It's almost a lifestyle. But we're now in the process of real delegation. So there's now multiple people in the office, to where my business partner was doing all the engineering and shop drawings. He's stepping out of that role. We have 2 others. We hired a designer to do design and then ultimately sales. And we're starting to, that lull is like, so there's a huge spike in payroll with little to no change to productivity. And because of how technical we are as a business, it might be that way for 90 days before they're really running and gunning. And it's like, how do you pay for that? And the answer is, I don't know. It's like, we're going to just keep selling and we're going to keep figuring it out. And the system side of it is like, I think is the last thing to unlock to really make this thing a sustainable, well-oiled machine to an extent.
Yeah. And I commend you for realizing that. And also this mindset or framework of, we're just going to figure it out. It's just a huge part of the mentality that carries you through so much of this stuff that you're just like, well, I don't know, man, but you have to just keep moving and taking action. And sure, you'll make mistakes. We always say, mistakes are tuition, one of my favorite lines. And that's how you build something great. You're not afraid to get out there, figure it out, make those mistakes, but also you're smart enough to embrace best practices. This just, 2-second lean thing. Great. You got to do that. I know you've hired a coach recently that's What's the name of the coach? John, what's his last name?
John Cipher.
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 Yeah. He's written a book called Output Thinking, and I think that's reaching out to help, whether you're reading the books or hiring these guys to come out. It's just a next evolution of your business, and I think it's a testament to success that you actually have time to think that way.
I think it's also I've realized because I tried a business coach. He was more like a fractional CFO. It's how he branded on Twitter. I won't say his name, but used him for I think 4 months. It was like 10 grand. I got no value from it. The guy and it was really nothing against him. He just didn't possibly know enough about our business, and he was coaching in a way that like you needed to. Where John is great because John is like his concepts apply to business as a whole. It doesn't really matter if you're a cabinet shop. He did video rental, which is totally obsolete now. Like there's all these, so he's really good at articulating that. And because even though I'm not in the shop, I'm very much still in the business, and it's hard to have that kind of visibility from business as a whole, almost as like a game. Yeah. And somebody like John Shannon, I'm sure yourself with your coaching, you kind of provide that insight and that visibility. And I think but I think you need to be, as an entrepreneur, you need to be in a certain phase of your journey to be open and willing to even hear those concepts. Absolutely. I think if you approached me 4 years ago when I was still making tables, you would have been speaking Spanish to me. I wouldn't have even known, what you're talking about. So it's kind of like catching people in the right phase.
Yeah, that's a good point. And okay, and so last question really for me is I met you up through X, and you're building up there doing talk about that and the value that you're getting out of it beyond. I'll prompt you, but I know you would say this anyway. Beyond just building your brand and followers, talk about that part of your the last 6 months.
I think the brand and the followers is purely a byproduct of the process of being on X. So I got on there because, Dave, like we were mentioning earlier, that the grinding phase, the process of kind of seizing opportunity and going through what it takes to get somewhere is not a pretty process. And as a result of that, and I think everybody's human, like there's no outlet for that either. Like, where do I go? My wife can only listen to the same problems every single day, and I love her, but she's just like, she asked me how my day was cautiously. Yeah, and so
of course,
I also don't want to bring home all the problems. So like, I'd rather bring problems to the other people that can relate to those problems. And I had been on X for a couple of years. I found SMB kind of community little pocket, and that's ultimately how we did the Growth Madness thing in the group. But all of a sudden, I started posting about some of the challenges of the day-to-day grind, and it almost became this therapeutic process for me because I got enough engagement back of other people either going through it at the same exact time I was, people who had gone through it and could offer some advice, or somebody that was maybe before that was like, hey, I think I'm going to be there in like 6 months. Like, how'd you navigate this thing? And that, so it all of a sudden became this breeding ground for connection, for people just doing something similar, even if it was a totally different business. And that connection is just purely what has kept me coming back. And the viral hits are fun, but I like just the providing more value and frankly, not even trying to do anything, just post about, what's going on in my world and, who else has something similar to relate to.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's it for me. We that collaboration and meeting other people that are either going through what you've already gone through to help out, or you're helping them out. It's a big deal. It's a huge resource, I think, for everybody. Using it in a positive way. I'm not a huge fan of social media for all the negatives that come of it, but this is certainly a positive. So, dude, that's great.
I think X is probably one of the last places that you can share stuff like that before, because everything else is a highlight reel, right? So X, even though it's changed a bit, it's still about the most authentic place you could be right now.
That's a good point. Yeah,
I think it. I don't want to derail us, but I think there's plenty of stuff on X that is completely inauthentic. However,
for sure,
and I think that's true of all social media.
Yeah.
I think you can, if you craft your whatever it is, you're following your environment on any given platform, you can find value.
Well, that's what I learned from you, Dave, because
Yeah,
I had
exactly. That's
ignored
what I'm
it.
saying,
I
is
ignored
it's-
it forever.
Yeah.
And he was like, "You're doing it wrong. You just have to." And I was like, "Really?" And then once I started messing around with it late last year, it's like, "Oh, he's right. I mean, it's super valuable, and you can read."
You just got to ignore the noise because it is built to attract you with the things that you hate.
Yeah.
Right? And you've got to just like not
Fine-tune
give
it.
into that at all. And that will
Yep.
eventually fine tune it. Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Well, Alex, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Someday I'll have you do my kitchen, and we'll build some cabinets in California, and follow along. We'll put Alex's X handle in the show notes, and coming up to Business Brain, follow along as we meet some awesome entrepreneurs. Follow along with all of us. So thank you for coming again, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. A ton of fun.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure to meet you, and thanks for answering all our crazy questions. We love digging into this stuff, as you can probably tell. So it's
I
great.
could talk all day about this.
Yeah.
So.
Thanks for hanging out, folks. If you have any questions for us, of course, you can find us on X, you can find us on Facebook, you can find us on LinkedIn, and you can email us feedback@businessbrain.show. In fact, just go to businessbrain.show. That's going to be the best place to find us. We'll see you there. Have a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you next week. And we're out. Cool.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to end the stream real quick.
Thanks for hanging
folks,
out, everybody.
Thanks for hanging out. All right.
Yeah.